Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for joining us on Designing Adobe XD. I'm Alex Poterek. I'm one of the senior designers on XD. Filling in for Talon today. Sorry for a little bit of a late start today. We were just working through a few things. We still plan on giving a full half hour of content. Like I said, thanks for joining. Happy Friday. Happy to be here. Yeah, I'm just gonna see who's gonna trickle in for a little bit, and then we'll kick things off. Today we're gonna talk a little bit about micro animations and how those play a big role in UI today. Whether it's on the web, whether it's on your mobile devices, the little delights that you get from micro animations are key to a design system today. We're gonna actually go over a project that one of the first things I actually worked on when I joined XD. It was a little bit of like a prototype, experiment in playfulness that we could add into XD. We still haven't built it yet, but I just want to show you the prototype that I made using code, and how we can actually do that in XD today. And at the time, we couldn't do that because we didn't have things like auto-animate or any more, or components even. I'll show you how important components are going to be in this workflow, and sort of show how I would do this with code, but then also how that process actually translates really well and is a very similar setup, but in a shorter amount of time. Hello everyone in the stream. Anna, Omar, Palash, Khalil, Huxel, Fatima, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining today. Let's kick it off a little bit. Maybe we can go onto my screen and see where we are. So here's XD. Most of you are probably familiar with it. I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of it, of course, up front, just in case any of you that are new are joining us. And we'll get started. So to kind of tee it up, I want to show the prototype that I actually made, and I love that I keep growing on the screen. So the thing that I first started on was I've always really focused on the prototyping side of things because I have that sort of background, and the first thing that I worked on was the transitions within XD. So I'm going to jump into XD real quick and sort of set up the problem, because every design should be based on the problem and what the problem is for the user. So if I go here in XD, I created an artboard. I'm going to duplicate this artboard just for effect. And I want to say, make a quick web page that maybe has, or not web page, app screen that has, let's say an image, a text block with text here, and we're gonna make this background a little bit different so we can really see what's happening here. Let me update this type. Actually, let me make this a little lighter. And I hate borders for the most part, so I'm gonna get rid of borders. And yeah, we'll start off with something like this. Actually, it's really hard to see on the screen, so we're gonna make this extremely the other way. We'll make it a dark. Let's throw some color in there, why not? I actually had to change my background color, and actually I'm digging this color right now, so I'm gonna pull from that real quick. Get a nice like construction vibe going out of this. Okay, so now that we have this screen made, I'm gonna go ahead and maybe copy and paste that over here, but we're gonna use a different background color. Maybe this one actually takes from that shade and we use a little bit darker version of it, just so you can see the two differences here. Okay, so the problem that we're gonna solve today is transitions. So if I have a bunch of buttons down here, I'm using the repeat grid to create these really quickly, and I go into prototype mode, I want this button down here to actually link to this screen, right? This is where some of the issues start to come into play, and this is something that I was going to hope to solve, and we're still working to solve this because we want to make this a better experience overall. But the idea is I have this transition going from this artboard to this artboard, and then these options right here, they're a little bit hard to parse. They're all text. You can't visualize what's going to happen. So slide left, what does that mean? And what's the difference between a slide and a push? I'll go over that really quickly just to show you what that is. So if I pick a slide, let's put 5 seconds just to be like really dramatic about it. So I'm gonna hit play, click this button, and then you can see that this other screen slides on top of it, right? And it's coming from, it's actually starting on the right side, but coming to the left, which is, again, a little bit hard to parse with just slide left. It is sliding to the left, but it's coming from the right. So that's a mental model that people have to kind of wrap their head around. So if I actually make an update to this and say push left, we'll see what the distinction is. So now the artboard doesn't slide on top of it, it actually pushes the screen aside with it. And these are two very common interactions that, whether it's Android or iPhone, these are built-in experiences a lot of times. One's a little bit more web-oriented and one's a little bit more native. Usually the slide is a bit more like iOS native. But that's the distinction, and that's where our problem sort of comes into play. Of course, you can keep your prototype window open and sort of adjust these and then just see on the fly and get a good idea really quickly, but we want to make it a little bit more obvious. So my proposal was to make the UI a little bit more visual and adding in these micro animations to help sort of show the user what the effect's going to do before they choose it. Let me grab some water real quick. Okay, so that being said, let's switch over to my prototype. So this is something I created. It's mostly in CSS, JavaScript, but what it does is it shows you a preview of what the actual animation is going to behave like. And it's only 3 buttons, and this actually picks your direction. It picks your animation type, all in just 3 visual elements. So when I hover over something, I can pick the direction and see that it's going to slide over the content or slide up and down with the content, or in the case of dissolve, it's just going to fade in and out really easy. So this took me maybe a day and a half to build up in code, because just like I said, it's very basic CSS and JavaScript stuff. But that's a day and a half for something that I could do in probably, we'll find out. We're going to try something similar right now, and it should only take about 20-25 minutes to accomplish. So let's go ahead and get rid of this now that we have this set up. Delete these. I'm going to create an artboard, and I'm just going to make it sort of like an arbitrary size because this is what we're going to work with. I'm going to go here, and I'm actually going to do a Command Control Shift 4, which is going to let me screen grab this. And it'll actually put it onto my clipboard. So I can just take a quick copy of this, go into XD, hit paste, and now I have this off to the side just as a reference. So I'll reference that later. So what I want to do is set up, let's just build a square. Let's just make one of these little components real quick. So I'm going to take this square, I'm going to add another square into it, like so, and then this is the current screen essentially, and then this is the transitioning screen, and that looks about roughly what we're working with here. This also had a few little what we call pips, these little dots, and we'll put these around the edges. Let's make it like 25 pixels. If you hold down Alt and then hover over a layer, it'll actually give you the distance. You can kind of see that popping in and out. So I want these to be 25 across. Gonna make another little pip over here, and then one last pip. Cool. All right, so it's very rough, very crude, but that's sort of the important part of this, right? When I'm building this with code or something like that, I'm usually gonna make it really rough, make sure I can get it to work first, and then I'll go back and start to style it afterwards. So an important part of that is actually selecting this and then making this a component. So I'm gonna hit Command K and make this a component so I can reuse this later on. And then I'm gonna duplicate this. And what I'm essentially gonna do is, I'm gonna, just for the sake of sanity, make this a little bit darker, I guess. And then come into this one and cover it. And then there you go. I'll show you real quick. If I wire this up here, I can go to a time transition and 0-second delay. Let's do like a 1-second transition, and let's auto-animate this. So when I hit play, you'll see it does it once. But I want this to loop back, so I'm gonna wire this back up to the first artboard, keep all the same properties, and I'm gonna see that it's actually starting to do what I want it to do. So I have a question up there. How do you use design system components with Adobe XD? Well, we use a design system called Spectrum, which is Adobe's internal design system, and they have XD files that contain all of their components, and we just use those, and we use to linked assets for those too. So it's extremely helpful. We have all of the components in XD in one file. We all contribute the new features to that file, and we all pull from that as a single source of truth. But that's a great question. All right, so we have this going, which is very basic, but very good. And one thing I forgot to add up here is I want to add directionality. So I'm gonna create this little guy right here. Let's make this like this is like the selected state. And we're gonna essentially duplicate these 4 times because we need 4 different directions of these. And what I'm gonna do, just to save us time, is actually get rid of these things and then start to wire these up, right? So I want this this pip to actually go to this second artboard. I want this pip down here to go to this third artboard, and I want this one to go to the fourth artboard down here. And then likewise, I want this to go here. And you'll see how this all comes together at the end. A lot of this is just planning ahead of time. But I'm gonna go ahead and take these components, and I'll take this, paste it here on all of these, and you can see that it actually comes with the correct wiring, and that's why I did it first on one, and then I'll just paste it again down here. When I copy these, it'll keep all the correct wiring going to the right artboards. The only thing I have to do at the end is wire this back to the original one, because you can't wire to itself. So a couple clicks away, and then we'll have a fully working prototype. Cool. All right. So to get this going now, I want this artboard to go over here. Oh, and you know what? I've sort of messed this up. I'm going to restart real quick. So what I did is I didn't pay attention to what my transition properties were, so I'm just going to make these transition to none, so it's just like an instantaneous one. Just got to keep that in mind next time. So wire these up correctly. last one here, last one here. And I'm gonna open my layers because I'm gonna need this in a second. So copy this one, select these 3 artboards, paste them there, copy this one, select these 3, paste them there. Okay, so now I want this. I want ellipse 1 to go here, and likewise I want ellipse 1 to go back here, ellipse 1 to go here, and then there's a couple tedious parts of this process, but it's a lot easier than doing these all individually without copying them out of components. Okay, cool. So we have that set up, and we should be good to go for the most part. So what we're going to do is when I clicked on to this one, let's go into design mode for a second. I obviously want the pip to go here, and I want this to start over here. And same for this one. Pip, or actually, no, sorry, this one goes down here. And this guy goes over here. Okay. And then I'm gonna have to make these adjustments over here. Yep, sorry, that's down here. Just gotta match the one above it. And these should all be wired. Time 0. Auto-animate, 1 second, perfect. And oops, these wires are getting in my way now. That's a sort of a bug. Yeah, that's a weird one. There we go. I'm gonna delete that one. Go here, wire this back up here. And this guy should go there with the time transition, and this one goes down here with the time transition. So if we start here, we should get this animation. But this guy has to go back in place because I forgot to move that again. Cool. All right, so we're starting to get this one to work, and then if I go over here, this one's working. Now let me wire these up real quick. Auto-animate, 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 and we're good. Okay, so this should crudely work just as is. So I can click over here and then see how these all transition out. For some reason this guy didn't want to click. Yep, there it is, okay. Yep, so now we're starting to get the same sort of feel from the other prototype. Yeah, the wires start to get out of control, right? There's a lot going on, but once you have these simple things wired up, you can just duplicate them, and now I can start to create a different type of component. So this was showing you that slide on top of, but you can also start to really quickly kind of give this the push feel now. So if I take this second rectangle and just do one of these, move this out and take this one. So now that I had that one set wired up, this one should now give you that push feel. Oh, I didn't do it to the first one. Okay. Just like this. Yeah, so now you get that push instead of that just overlaying. And we'll kind of give this a little bit of a window to sort of work with. So I'm going to copy all of these, or select all of these, hit paste, and add a just sort of a little window so you can sort of see the window that is popping in and out of that little rectangle that I set up in the middle. So Rodrigo's asking me, no, I'm not an engineer. I was hired to Adobe to work on sort of like an internal incubator team where I would design and just like crudely mock things up with using like front end script. So I have a little bit of a coding background, but my title is actually I'm a designer. I don't do as much of the engineering work as I used to, but when I was on that team, the goal was to actually design something and then just make a quick prototype so that we can test it out with people and see if other product teams wanted to introduce similar behaviors to their products. But yeah, I just pretty quickly have this, both the instance of the slide over and then the push mocked up. And then the beauty of using the components is I can start to really finesse it now. So I'm gonna add a little bit of like a rounded corner, get rid of the border because borders are the worst, and kind of add a light shade. This one, get rid of that border again. Maybe lighten this up. No, let's go a little bit darker. Get rid of this border. And then these dots. Actually, I'm going to select this one. We will get rid of the border, of course, and do something like this. And maybe let's make this dot a little bit nicer. Or like maybe let's give it a little blue accent. Of course, without the border. We can do better than that blue. Cool. So we have this going. Let's actually make this a little bit lighter. And I guess I'll add a little bit of border. And then just like that, I have something very similar working to what the prototype above showed. I think that took us all of like 15 minutes, maybe, something like that. And there's a ton of finessing I can still do with how the different colors work. So if I want to actually sort of want to make this a little bit lighter, and then this is actually going to be a touch of gray too. This will be like this, but we'll give this a little bit of a light, gentle border, like that. And then you start to get a switch. The switch starts to get going. And then obviously there's one last thing that we didn't create, which is the dissolve, which should be the easiest of all of them. So actually I'm just gonna delete this, go to prototype mode, duplicate these two, and then all I have to do is pretty much put this guy on top, get this guy there, take this top one, and yeah, opacity 0. So this one maybe I need to make a little bit darker just so so it pops a little bit more. Theoretically, it should work. And there you go. You can see it fading in and out pretty easily. I think the one thing I didn't get to before, and maybe I can get to now, is what would auto-animate look like with this? How would I sort of start to visualize like what auto-animate's going to start to do? And I think what I would do for that is I would take a single square and then I would start to do something more like this, where now I'm gonna go move it over here, do another thing, maybe make it grow. Do one more. So I'm actually treating these like they're like this is a storyboard. So I can really easily start to tell a story just using like all these artboards. And then one more. Actually, I might move this up here. And yeah, that should do it. So now what I'm going to do is just wire these all up with auto-animate. And these should feel a little bit poppier. So let's actually play with this. I think I can, yeah, 0.3 might be good. And I actually feel like maybe snap might feel really good. So let me wire these up to here. And wire it back, and then let's see how this plays out. There we go. So now I can kind of really give the illusion of what auto-animate would do if you selected it. But I also think it needs to be longer. So I'm going to select all those wires, slow it down just a little bit, give this a shot, and then there you go. If this animation was happening, I think this gives you a pretty good idea of what auto-animate would do, especially if you had the title auto-animate under it. I, of course, directionality doesn't matter for these, so I would probably get rid of these. Let's not get rid of them, but like let's fade them out maybe. So let's do that. And then, yeah, so we have a dissolve, we have slide in, we have push, we have auto-animate, we have a lot of the core functionality all visualized in XD. And that only took me about 20 minutes, where it took me a day and a half before. So yeah, that's sort of the insights on how easy it is to produce really visual and compelling animations to help the user understand what they're deciding and what they're choosing. Thanks everyone for joining, and happy Friday.